Good day again, class. In this video, I will teach you how to apply for ethics clearance. So, before I will teach you how to apply for the ethics clearance itself, let's have an introduction to ethics in research first. I know you have a subject on health ethics, and so this is just a review again. According to Potter Stewart, ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. Ethics in research. So why ethics? Ethics is moral behavior. Our focus here now is on the research participant. We also consider community and environment in ethics. So it is the framework applying broad ethical principles to the responsible conduct of research and the use of any outcomes resulting from this research. So as you can see in this figure at the right side, is it ethical to have one respondent or more respondents? So actually when we are computing for your sample size, sample design, it seems that the more the respondents, the better the generalization of your results. But is it ethical? Or why do we still need to do get a sample or compute for your sample size if it is better to have everyone as your respondents? Now that boils down to ethics in research. Is it ethical? Is it the right thing to do? Does it protect your research participants? Does it preserve credibility, trust, and accountability? Does your research reduce liabilities, wasted time, and resources? Does it turn useless, harmful, worthless to useful, helpful, and worthy outcomes? And does it obey the law? So this provides advocates for research participants. Their rights, safety, and well-being of your research participants are the most important considerations and should prevail over your interest or over your research questions and study itself. The following are the considerations that we can check for ethics of our paper. So number one, and the most important of all, we learn from the past. So every scientific breakthrough was paid with people's lives. We experience that now when we did clinical trials for the COVID-19 vaccine. We needed to test the vaccine if these are effective or this has side effects to people. So there are people that tried the vaccines first to check if these are effective or these has side effects. So, but good people have acted in bad ways in the past when they are doing their researches. And some researchers will act inappropriately. So what makes ethics interesting to study and to use in your research is when you learn the history of why they did the committee for ethics of researches. So we have Edward Jenner for its cowpox, the surgery without anesthesia, antisepsis, leprobacillus inoculation into the eyes, rabies vaccine on human subject without animal studies, lumbar puncture of a 2-year-old girl, yellow fever in the Philippines, inoculation of cholera to Filipino prisoners, the Tuskegee clinical syphilis study, the Nazi experiments on human endurance in war, and Willowbrook hepatitis experiments. I don't know if you've tackled this in your health ethics, but if you have time, you need to or you must learn what happened with these researches. And of course, why it is interesting to learn on their ethics. See here on the right, this is the Nazi freezing experiment by Dr. Sigmund Rascher and Dr. Ernst Holzlohner. They observed the reactions of the Chow prisoner who has been immersed in a tank of ice water in an attempt to simulate the extreme hypothermia suffered by pilots down over frigid seas. And you will see on the left that a prisoner in a compression chamber loses consciousness and later dies during an experiment to determine altitudes at which aircraft crews could survive without oxygen. So are these experiments or researches ethical? And other considerations are number two, believe that there are correct ways in doing the research. Of course, your research participants are indispensable. They should be the ones that chooses to join your research. You did not force them to join, or it cannot be worse off by joining the research. So the protection of the research participants is a universal concern. Therefore, number three, we value the research participants. Foremost responsibility of researcher is the protection, the rights, the safety, and welfare of each participant. While the primary purpose of your research is to generate new knowledge, this goal cannot take precedence over the right and interest of individual research participants. Number four is value self. So you know you are honorable and trustworthy, so you do ethical researches. Number five, value community and environment. This is the impact on the community which participants represent both during and after the research. Now we go to ethics clearance application itself, the initial procedures, and the review process. So what is the purpose of the review? Number one, we need to protect the participants. Number two, a committee needs to determine the worth of your research. And number three, if there are improvements that needs to be made for the research to make it ethical. Number one step is submission of application form and your research proposal to the review ethics committee staff. So what they say is a scientific misconduct before the study implementation is when you have inaccurate, deceptive, and manufactured background information, your CV, your curriculum vitae, undocumented references. That means you did not cite your references. Non-submission for ethical review and approval is a scientific misconduct, and non-disclosure of conflict interest. So this is from our training under the Philippine Health Research Ethics Board. Step number two is acceptance of submission package by the RAC staff. They will be using a checklist to check for completeness. And here, they need to inform the researcher of the completeness of submission or the need for other documents. And if it is complete, they will put a code in the submission and they will return copy of application form to the researcher with recipient signature and date. They will also inform the researcher of date of the decision when will it be available. Step 3 is determination of type of review needed. There is what we call an expedited, full, and exempted from review. Expedited is when there is not more than minimal risk. This is when you do surveys not involving delicate questions or you use stored specimens, for example, for biopsy specimens. And for full review, this is when you use a more than minimal risk and a vulnerable population. And then later we will talk about exempt from review. For a full review, there needs to have 2 or more members of the committee that will check your paper. For expedited, one will do, and for example, none will review. So why are other exempted? Baka naman exempted yung yung paper ko. So exemption from ethics review means there is no direct human participation nor use of identifiable human tissue, biological samples, and data, not more than minimal risk or harms. Surveys, interviews, or observation of public behavior can be exempted from ethics review provided that there is, number one, no disclosure of participants' responses that could place them at risk of liabilities and affect your reputation. Number two, recording of the information such that the identity of the participant cannot be readily ascertained. And number three, use of publicly available data or information. So for the review process, use assessment form or review checklist. They will check the presentation of the study, presentation and discussion of technical and ethical issues, and they will provide the decision after this. If it is approved, major or minor revisions are required, or if it is disapproved. And lastly, to communicate the decision to the researcher, including the list of further necessary actions that they or he or she needs to undertake. So a good review is systematic, fair, and transparent. It will ensure the scientific and ethical acceptability of the researcher or the research and makes it credible and worthy. These are the benefits from your review. So these are actually the stages of the ethical review. We made the initial submission, there's a preliminary evaluation, there's an initial review, and there is an approval. But you will see that when it is approved, you still have post-approval reports. There's a review of post-approval reports, and there is a continuing review. And until the final report, your ethics clearance board will still be checking if you've complied with the ethics of the research. So just quickly, and to make it easy for you who will be applying for ethics clearance, this is an example. This is letter A, the review checklist. So you will see here in the review checklist the basic documents that you need to submit. This review checklist itself, that's why I lettered it A. And then technical review clearance this is for the Region 2 Trauma Medical Center. This is where we usually apply for ethics clearance here in Region 2. But for your technical review clearance for R2TMC is only for funded researches. So it's A, it's B. Letter C is the printed registration and application form. I'll show that to you later. Letter D is the study assessment form. There's a form also for that. I will show that later. Letter E is your research proposal itself. Chapters 1 to 3, your study protocol. Letter F will be data collection forms, which includes your CRFs. There's also a tool for this, but data collection forms are your review questionnaire, survey questionnaires, your interview guides, your observation checklist. These are the data collection forms. Your letter G, diagrammatic workflow. This is your workflow, the data procedure or data collection procedure. And H would be the curriculum vitae of the primary investigator and the study team members. Since this is an undergraduate thesis, you include the CV of your advisor. Letter I is the electronic copy of the study protocol. We don't do this at this time because it's pandemic. We submit all these through email. So there's no need for I because this would also be your letter E already. Then proof of payment as applicable. We also skip this. Now we ask Dean if he could if he could ask if we could pass first before payment. Okay, and then there's also additional documents that needs to be passed. For example, like I highlighted in red, I need to have an informed consent in the local language of my human participants because they are not English speakers. The memorandum of agreement, because my study here is funded study, and because we will be having indigenous populations, we need to have clearance from NCIP. Then letter B here now is the technical review clearance for RT2MC. You don't need this. Letter C is the protocol application form. So you will see here what's the type of submission. That's initial review, date of submission, category, okay, and category of investigator. For us, it's a university, college, faculty. For you, it would be not this. It would be university, college, undergraduate students. And then purpose of the study, this is for you, academic requirement for your thesis. And then you need to type in your study title and then the synopsis of your study here. Only a maximum of 500 words. And then you have technical synopsis. You need to write here the page numbers where they can find the objectives, expected outputs, literature review, research design, sampling design, etc. So the page numbers are according to your research proposal. And then you have ethical consideration section if you've written these parts in your research protocol. If not, you should write it. And then study duration here and use of special populations and vulnerable groups. If not applicable or others, you need to indicate here. And then endorsing college, unit, or institution, you write here other institutions because that's CSU. And then the study site, this would be outside R2TMC for you. Funding agency, no funding agency. Okay, there's no funding agency. Study budget, you can just write your approximate study budget. Then if there is a previous ethics approval or clearance issued, so this one's for you is not applicable. Under letter C, the principal investigators, the researchers themselves, birthday, address, phone, mobile, email. There's no, for you guys, there are no ongoing studies. If there are conflict of interest, you need to write here and add your co-investigators here. So maybe in this part, you just write like the leader of the group and then just put your co-investigators here and then submitted by and then the signature of the principal investigator. And then we'll look at section 2 here. If there is a technical review approval endorsement, so you don't need this. What you need would be the institutional endorsement. This is to be signed by head of the unit. Issuing college would be College of Allied Health Sciences. And then head of the unit would be Dean Julius. So he will be the one signing this. And then section 4, authorization of acknowledgement of review, you just need to type in the study title and the principal investigator. That's the same. And for letter D, the protocol assessment form, you have this form also. You need to just put the title, the principal investigator, the study protocol submission date. You just need to put the page numbers of the following that they are looking for: the objectives, the literature review, research design, sampling design, sample size, etc. Also, this one is the next pages. You need not to put a page number if you don't have entries for those, like this ascent that you need to give for children under 0 to 7, 7 to 12. If you don't have respondents like that, you need not to put any page numbers. Huwag nating pilitin. And then letter E would be A, B, C, D, E, study protocol, your research proposal. And then F would be your tools, your questionnaires, your interview guides, your observation checklist, and this informed consent assessment form. So you need this. It looks like the other form. You need to put the title, the investigator, the submission date, and you need to put the page numbers of your informed consent if they have all these essential elements that they are looking for. So these are the next pages. Again, if you don't have that in your research, then you need not to put any page numbers. Then letter G would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The diagrammatic workflow is your workflow in your data collection procedure. And then you have the CV of the primary investigator and the other members and your advisor. And then that's it. For H, the CV. For I, the e-copy, you need not to do that because you will pass all of these through email. And for the payment, ethics review fee, the initial fee that we are paying is 5,000 pesos. We are paying that directly to R2TMC. I will clarify to the ethics review board how much it is for undergraduate thesis. And yes, that's for letter J. And who needs to submit? So all those that uses human participants, so those that we will do survey, even though you will not be injecting anything to them or giving them any medicines, as long as you have human participants or respondents, you need to submit. Other institutions are lucky because in their institution itself, there's already an ethics review board. But for us, because we don't have an ethics review board yet, we need to source it out. You need to submit, especially if you want your paper to be published or presented in forums or conventions and conferences. If not, you can haggle that you need not to submit because you just want it for your thesis. I attach here the sample list from my Google Drive for you to be organized in passing for your ethics clearance requirements. You can also do this. So, where to submit? You will be submitting all your folders, uh, having all the checklist requirements at jinkymarituliao@gmail.com. I'll be the one sending all your ethics application to our CSU institutional review board. We already have our own ethics review board, so we don't have to submit it already to R2TMC. I did not change my slides already for the example for the forms of R2TMC since the forms of R2TMC is the same as the forms of CSU Ethics Board. Okay, that's it for ethics clearance application. I will be giving the link of the Google Drive where you can find all the forms, all the sample forms also that I've shown here in this video. Thanks for watching.